bench.
7 on the shot clock. It's getting physical now.
Sophie Cunningham didn't flinch. The blow came quick, a sharp, unapologetic shot to the eye that caught her square. No play acting, no slow motion collapse, just a quick wince, a hand going to her face, and a half step backward as the world steadied. She blinked, planted her feet, and glanced toward the officials, expecting something, a whistle, a pause, maybe even the quiet buzz of a replay review. Nothing. Her teammates stood exactly where they were, eyes on the ball, not her. The same jerseys she'd been fighting alongside all night might as well have been mannequins. No one crossed the court. No one put a hand in an opponent's chest. No one even said a word. From the Phoenix sideline, the body language was different, a quick smirk between players, the subtle nod of recognition that they'd just taken something more valuable than 2 points. Across the hardwood, the Fever's silence hung heavy, and if you were in the building, you could feel the shift. Momentum didn't just slide, it was seized. And that's the thing, you can miss these moments if you only skim the box score the next day. You'll see field goal percentages, turnover counts, the final margin. You won't see the second Sophie took that hit and realized she was standing alone. You won't feel the way Phoenix's energy surged, the way Indiana's posture softened, the way the whole game's temperature changed in a heartbeat. This wasn't just about a missed foul. It was a window into the Fever's very foundation, or lack of one. And it was the climax of a tension that had been quietly building for months, ever since Dana Bonner left Indiana with a shrug and a parting shot. Bonner had been in Indiana not so long ago, wearing the same colors Sophie does now. Back then she was quiet, almost subdued. Nights came and went where her stat line barely moved the needle. The spark she showed in Phoenix now, the decisive drives, the feathery pull-ups, the sharp crossovers, seemed to have been in storage. When she left the Fever, she didn't leave with polite thanks. She was blunt about her dissatisfaction, about how little the situation suited her, about her readiness to move on. The Fever, for their part, stayed publicly silent. But nights like this make you wonder how silent they were inside their own walls. Because when Bonner walked back into their orbit in a Mercury jersey, she didn't just play well, she played like someone who had circled this date on her calendar months ago. She didn't ease into the game, she jumped straight into the bloodstream of it. The steal she ripped early in the first quarter wasn't just a defensive highlight, it was a declaration. She pushed the pace, hit shots in rhythm, and talked after every make.
There's the trash that Bonner's talking.
And if she seemed to have a preferred target, it was Lexi Hull. Every basket came with eye contact, every possession with a little extra. And then there was Sophie, the counterweight to Bonner's energy. With Caitlin Clark unavailable, the Fever were missing not just their leading scorer, but the gravitational center of their offense. Someone had to take the leadership mantle, and Sophie picked it up the only way she knows how, loudly, physically, and without backing down from anyone.
And this is when it got really chippy. Sophie Cunningham wasn't letting Bonner go and also was smiling.
Bonner sticking with it.
The problem was, she seemed to be the only one willing to pick it up. From the opening minutes, Sophie was chasing matchups across the floor, switching aggressively, pressing into bodies on defense.
Players.
Well, this is a really physical matchup between Hull and Bonner.
She jawed with veterans like Alyssa Thomas, answered verbal jabs from Collie Copper, and most pointedly refused to give ground to Bonner. She played as if each possession was personal. But basketball isn't a solo sport, and every time she looked to drag the team with her, the pull seemed one-sided. Screens weren't being set, cutters stood still, and defensive help came late if at all. Even as Sophie poured in points, hitting with efficiency, attacking closeouts, muscling her way to rebounds, the support was tepid. And so when that elbow came and she hit the floor holding her face, the silence from her side was deafening. Phoenix didn't just see a wounded player, they saw a team that wouldn't fight for its own. In the WNBA, that's an open invitation. Physical play intensified, Phoenix sped up their tempo, and their body language went from alert to predatory. If the first half was about trading runs, the second half was about seizing control, and the Mercury took it with both hands. Bonner's jumper stayed true, Copper sliced through the lane, and Sophie somehow began the third quarter on the bench. No foul trouble, no visible injury, just a coaching decision that baffled fans and analysts alike. The Fever's most engaged player, the one actually matching Phoenix's edge, was suddenly a spectator. The rest played out with an air of inevitability. Without Clark's gravity or Sophie's constant pressure, Indiana's offense became static. Phoenix doubled ball handlers, closed passing lanes, and baited the Fever into low-percentage shots. Every Mercury basket came with a little more swagger, every Fever possession looked a little more resigned. By the time the final horn sounded, it wasn't just a win for Phoenix, it was a statement. And that's where the real implications begin. Because this wasn't just about one night. It was about a Fever team that, without its star, seemed to lose its identity entirely. It was about a culture that didn't respond when one of its own took a hit. It was about a coaching staff that benched the one player showing real fight. And it was about a former player, Dana Bonner, walking back into the building and performing like the star Indiana never got to see. In a league where physicality and mental toughness are as valuable as shooting percentages, nights like this are litmus tests. Phoenix passed. Indiana didn't just fail, they showed the rest. Phoenix didn't just close out that game, they closed it with the confidence of a team that had cracked a code. Every possession in those final minutes felt like a formality, an inevitable march toward a conclusion everyone in the arena could see coming. The Mercury weren't just running an offense, they were running the Fever through a series of tests. The Fever failed again and again. Switch, Phoenix punished the mismatch. Help defense, the ball swung quickly to the open shooter. Pressure on the perimeter. They slipped a cutter to the basket. Indiana, meanwhile, played like they were waiting for someone to step in and rewrite the ending. The body language told its own story, shoulders slumped after missed rotations, hands on hips after late closeouts, heads tilting toward the scoreboard as if to check how much time was left to endure. This wasn't the fight you expect from a team chasing a win on the road, much less one that's been accused of lacking edge. The deeper you looked, the more it became clear this wasn't just about X's and O's. It was about the absence of something harder to quantify, that instinct to close ranks when things get rough, to answer physicality with your own, to send a message that you won't be pushed around. Phoenix had it. Indiana didn't. That missing edge had been masked earlier in the season by Caitlin Clark's presence. Her scoring, her vision, her ability to force defenses into mistakes just by being on the floor. Clark is the kind of player who changes geometry. Defenders stay a half step closer to her even when she doesn't have the ball. Passing lanes open for others. Weak side rotations hesitate just long enough for someone else to cut or slip into open space. With her out, the Fever weren't just missing a player. They were missing the gravitational pull that kept their offense orbiting in shape. But what Clark doesn't provide, and what no single player can, is the collective backbone a team needs when games get ugly. That comes from culture, from a locker room where every player knows that contact gets answered, that stars get protected, that teammates are an extension of yourself. Without that, even the most talented rosters will look ordinary when the game turns into a street fight. And make no mistake, Phoenix was happy to turn this into one. Sophie Cunningham knew that from the opening tip. Cunningham's game has always been equal parts skill and swagger, the kind that thrives when there's something personal at stake. With Clark out, she didn't just see a chance to take more shots, she saw a responsibility to set a tone. The early possessions told you everything you needed to know. She fought through screens without asking for help, switched onto bigger players and bodied them without blinking, and never let a Mercury scorer have a quiet possession. But Sophie's brand of leadership isn't about soft huddles and clapping hands. It's about letting your opponent know they're in for a long night and dragging your team into that mindset with you. She barked after stops, pounded her chest after buckets, and shot looks toward her own bench as if to say, "Follow me." The trouble was, few did. Contrast that with Bonner, whose night was a slow burn revenge tour. She wasn't sprinting in every possession like Sophie, she was stalking them. Picking matchups, isolating the players she wanted to embarrass, leaning into the kind of trash talk that isn't for the cameras but is plenty loud enough for its target to hear. The fact that Lexi Hull became her favorite canvas was telling. Every bucket on Hull came with a gesture, a word, a glare. This wasn't just competition, it was personal accounting. The turning point, of course, was that hit to Sophie's eye. On its own, it was the kind of physical contact you see in high-level basketball every night. In the NBA and the WNBA and overseas leagues, physicality happens. But the context around it is what made it the moment of the game. Sophie had been the lone source of defiance for Indiana all night. She'd been the one to match Phoenix's intensity. She'd been the only player on her team to look physically and emotionally locked in from start to finish. And yet, when she went down, no one stood up for her. That was all the signal Phoenix needed. Suddenly, every drive came with more shoulder. Every screen got a little wider. Every post-up leaned just a little harder. The Fever had shown they wouldn't push back, so the Mercury kept pushing forward. The decision to bench Sophie to start the third quarter only deepened the wound. It wasn't just questionable, it was baffling. In a game where energy was the most valuable currency, Indiana sat the one player who had it in abundance. Without her on the floor, the Fever's offense became predictable, their defense reactive instead of proactive. Phoenix ballooned their lead, and the Fever never got back within striking distance. After the game, the questions weren't about specific plays or even the final score. They were about identity. How does a team let an opponent run through them without resistance? How does a coaching staff justify sitting the player who'd been your only spark? And most importantly, what happens when Caitlin Clark isn't there to mask the cracks? League insiders have seen this before. Teams built around a singular talent often look elite until that talent is unavailable. Then the supporting cast is exposed, not just for what it can't do statistically, but for what it won't do culturally. Indiana's front office has spoken all season about building something sustainable around Clark, about creating an environment where stars want to stay and thrive. Nights like this raise uncomfortable questions about whether that environment exists yet. In Phoenix, the mood was entirely different. Bonner's performance was being celebrated not just for its production, but for its symbolism. Here was a player who'd been written off in Indiana, who'd been accused of mailing it in, now putting on a clinic against the very team she'd left. It wasn't lost on anyone that she seemed to enjoy every second of it. In the post-game press area, she was measured in her words but unmistakable in her satisfaction. "I'm just in a good place right now," she said, smiling just enough to let the rest of the sentence hang unspoken. "And this place is Indiana." For Sophie, the story was different. She finished with 18 points on efficient shooting, but her night will be remembered for the fight she showed more than the buckets she scored. In a sense, that's both a compliment and an indictment. Compliment because she embodied the toughness the Fever lacked. Indictment because no one else matched it. Around the league, other teams will watch the film of this game and take notes. The Fever can be pushed. They can be baited. Their leaders can be isolated. And if Clark is out, they can be knocked off rhythm entirely. That's not just a scouting report, that's a roadmap. The Fever's next games will say a lot about whether they learn from this or let it define them. In the WNBA, reputations are built quickly. A team that fights together, protects its stars, and responds to physicality with force becomes the team others think twice about targeting. A team that does, they become the team everyone circles on the calendar. Right now, Indiana is in danger of being the latter.